This alliance seals our fates to victory.
Together we are stronger. The stars will witness our resolve.
Indeed.
Subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. Eric Parker stared at the delicate ceramic cup between his fingers, painfully aware that one wrong move could shatter both the priceless artifact and humanity's best chance at an alliance. The cup looked like it belonged in a doll's tea set, barely large enough to hold a tablespoon of the steaming purple liquid. Across the low ceremonial table, Captain Zena Tarta watched him with barely hidden amusement. Her azure skin reflected the light from Octano's twin suns, and her violet eyes sparkled with mischief as she gracefully demonstrated the proper technique. In her smaller hands, the movements looked effortless. "Perhaps we should have ordered the children's training set for our Earth delegate," she said, drawing quiet laughter from the council members. "Though I fear even that might prove too sophisticated." Eric kept his face calm, though his jaw tightened slightly. After 15 years in special forces, he had faced rebel insurgents and survived 3 crash landings on hostile worlds. He wasn't about to let this small blue warrior get under his skin, no matter how sharp her tongue, or how distractingly perfect her features were. "Your concern is touching, Captain," he replied carefully, mimicking her movements. "Though I assure you, humans can be surprisingly delicate when properly motivated." "Is that so?" Zena raised an elegant eyebrow. "Yet you lumber through our sacred halls like a drunken Karakan beast, ducking under doorways meant for civilized beings." The council members, none taller than Eric's chest, murmured their agreement. Eric took a careful sip of the tea, managing not to spill a drop despite the cup being barely larger than his thumbnail. The liquid burned like fire down his throat, but he maintained his composure. "Speaking of civilized beings," Elder Voss interrupted, his ancient voice crackling with authority, "we have gathered here today to discuss the terms of our alliance." Eric noticed how Zena's posture stiffened. She knew what was coming. They both did. "The human delegation has proposed a joining of our peoples," the elder continued, "through the sacred bond of marriage between Captain Tarta and Commander Parker." The room erupted in chaos. Zena shot to her feet, her ceremonial armor glinting in the sunlight streaming through the crystal windows. "I would sooner wed a mountain," she declared, gesturing at Eric. "At least it would have the courtesy to remain still and silent." Eric slowly rose to his full height, forcing several council members to crane their necks to maintain eye contact. "The mountain accepts your colorful metaphor, Captain," he said dryly. "Though I should warn you, we're known to be surprisingly mobile when earthquakes strike." Their eyes locked across the table, tension crackling between them like static electricity. Eric couldn't help noticing how her anger made her even more striking. The deep blue of her skin flushed slightly purple at her cheeks, and her lips pressed into a thin line of defiance. The elder slammed his ceremonial staff against the polished floor. "The decision is made," he declared. "For the survival of both our peoples, this union must proceed." "But elder," Zena protested, her voice tight with fury, "how can we trust these giants with our sacred ways? Look at him. He can barely manage a simple tea ceremony without risking destruction of our ancestral artifacts." Eric set the tiny cup down with exaggerated care. "Perhaps if you're so concerned about my destructive capabilities, Captain," he said, "you'd care to demonstrate your superior grace in the training arena." The challenge slipped out before he could stop himself. A predatory smile spread across Zena's face. "Oh, I thought you'd never ask, Mountain Man." With the elder's permission granted, they left the ceremonial chamber. Eric had to duck under the low doorway yet again. Behind him, Zena laughed. "Mind your head, Commander. Though perhaps a few bumps might knock some sense into it." "Your concern for my welfare is overwhelming," he replied dryly. "Though I notice you spend an awful lot of time looking up at my head." She snorted and led him through a winding corridor designed for her people's size. The training arena turned out to be an open-air courtyard, surrounded by crystalline spires reflecting the light of the twin suns. The ground felt springy beneath Eric's feet, almost like memory foam. Zena removed her ceremonial armor, revealing a sleek training suit. Eric kept his eyes on her face, though her knowing smirk suggested she had noticed his brief glance. "Our combat style relies on speed, agility, and precision," she explained while stretching. "Qualities that I imagine are somewhat foreign to your species." "You might be surprised," Eric replied, removing his jacket. "Humans can be quite adaptable." The challenge was simple. Land a touch on the opponent while avoiding being touched. First to 3 points wins. Zena attacked first, moving like lightning, Eric shifted just enough to let her pass. Her eyes widened slightly. Not bad, she admitted. But when she attacked again, Eric intercepted her path and brushed her shoulder. Point, he said calmly. The crowd murmured in surprise. Zena flushed purple with irritation and attacked faster, scoring 2 quick points. But when she launched into a spinning leap for the final strike, her foot slipped on the landing. Without thinking, Eric stepped forward and caught her. For a moment, time froze. She was pressed against his chest, his arm around her waist. Their faces were inches apart. Eric became suddenly aware of how perfectly she fit against him. Her breathing matched his own. Her skin was warm beneath his hands, and her violet eyes held tiny flecks of silver. Zena seemed equally stunned. Then awareness returned, and she stepped back quickly. That was... She started, clearly flustered. A draw, Eric suggested. Yes, a draw. The next day, they began preparations for the bonding ceremony. Over the following week, temple renovations forced them to work together daily. Eric's strength and Zena's knowledge of sacred artifacts made an unexpectedly effective team. One afternoon, Eric lifted a massive ceremonial stone tablet that normally required 3 of her people. This is completely unnecessary, Zena huffed. We have anti-grav units for this, which are currently malfunctioning, Eric reminded her. Her eyes lingered on his arms as he worked. Try not to break anything, she muttered, though the usual bite in her tone was missing. Later, they explored the sacred caves, twisting tunnels filled with glowing crystals vital to their shield technology. As Zena explained their importance, a low rumble shook the cavern. Zena! Eric lunged forward and pulled her back just as a section of the ceiling collapsed where she had been standing. The momentum sent them both stumbling into a side chamber as more rocks fell, sealing the entrance behind them. When the dust settled, they found themselves trapped in a space barely large enough for Eric to stand upright. The temperature was already dropping noticeably. The emergency beacon won't penetrate these crystals, Zena said while checking her communicator. We'll have to wait for the rescue team to notice we're overdue. How long? Eric asked. 4 hours at minimum. These caves become dangerously cold at night. She was already shivering, her environmental suit not designed for such extended exposure. Eric sighed and motioned toward himself. Come here. What? You know exactly what body heat is, he said calmly. It's our best option right now, and I generate more of it than you do. He sat down with his back against the wall. Unless you'd prefer hypothermia. Zena hesitated, pride battling with practicality. Another shiver made the decision for her. If you make one joke about this, she warned while moving closer. Wouldn't dream of it. Eric helped her settle against him, her back resting against his chest. He wrapped his arms around her, and slowly she relaxed as his warmth surrounded her. Your heart beats slower than ours, she said after a while, resting her head against his shoulder. Stronger though, he replied softly. Evolutionary disadvantage, remember? She was quiet for a moment. Perhaps I was hasty in some of my judgments, she admitted quietly. Your size does have certain advantages. Eric chuckled softly. Was that almost a compliment, Captain? She shifted slightly and turned to face him in the dim crystal light. Don't let it go to your head. Their closeness made his breath catch. Her violet eyes glowed softly in the darkness, and he could feel every small movement as she breathed. Zena, he began. She pressed a finger gently against his lips. Stop talking, she whispered. Then she replaced her finger with a kiss. At first the kiss was hesitant, both of them adjusting to their differences in size. But within seconds something changed, and suddenly it felt natural, like they had always belonged together. Her hands slid up his chest while his hands gently cupped her face. Their bodies fit together in a way neither of them had expected. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing heavily. Zena's skin had turned that fascinating shade of purple again, but this time she didn't look away. Well, Eric managed to say, that was unexpected. She smiled, a real smile without any hint of teasing. I was going to say, about time. She laughed softly, the sound echoing across the crystal walls. Perhaps these caves aren't so cold after all. For hours later, the rescue team found them sitting close together and talking quietly. If anyone noticed the clear change in their dynamic, no one said anything. The next few days were difficult. Protocol demanded they maintain strict professionalism during the pre-bonding ceremonies. But every formal event was filled with tension. Stolen glances across crowded rooms, accidental brushes of fingers while exchanging documents, and standing just a little too close during diplomatic briefings. During one long council session, Zena deliberately dropped her datapad just to watch Eric retrieve it. The way his muscles moved beneath his formal uniform made her grip the armrest of her chair tightly. "Is everything all right, Captain?" Elder Voss asked, noticing her distraction. "You seem flushed." "The room is rather warm," she answered quickly, avoiding Eric's amused smirk. Later that evening, Eric found her waiting outside his quarters. She wore a simple civilian outfit that somehow made her even more striking than her ceremonial attire. "This is highly improper," he said, though he was already stepping aside to let her enter. "Since when do you care about proper?" she replied while looking around the modified furniture designed for his size. "The bonding ceremony isn't for 3 more days. And yet here you are," he said while stepping closer. "Breaking protocol. I thought we should practice," she said with a mischievous sparkle in her eyes. "For the ceremony. Wouldn't want any cultural mishaps." "How considerate." He gently ran a finger along her jawline. "Always thinking about my cultural education." She caught his hand and pressed a kiss against his palm. "Someone has to make sure you don't embarrass both our species." That was the last of Eric's restraint. He lifted her easily, bringing her face level with his as her legs wrapped around his waist naturally. "Still think I'm too big?" he murmured against her neck. She gasped softly. "Shut up and kiss me properly, mountain man." That night together was full of discovery. What could have been awkward instead became something natural and exciting. Zena's agility and Eric's strength complemented each other perfectly, and their physical differences only made their connection stronger. Later, she traced patterns across his chest while he played gently with her hair. "We should have done this sooner," she admitted. "But don't expect me to say that in public. Heaven forbid anyone thinks you've grown fond of the clumsy giant," Eric teased. She leaned up on one elbow, looking at him seriously. "You're not clumsy," she said. "You're surprisingly graceful. For a human." "High praise indeed." He pulled her closer again. "Well, we can't have you getting overconfident," she replied while settling against him with a satisfied sigh. "We still have to convince the council this union will work." "I think we've proven we work well together," he said. "Yes," she laughed softly. "But we can't exactly demonstrate this particular compatibility to the elders." The reminder of their public duty made them both quiet. Tomorrow they would return to formal distance and diplomatic protocol. But for now, inside the privacy of his quarters, they could simply be Eric and Zena, discovering how their differences made them stronger together. The council chamber exploded into chaos when surveillance footage appeared on the main screen. Someone had captured Zena entering Eric's quarters late at night, and not leaving until morning. "This is an outrage." Counselor K slammed his fist on the table. "Not only have they violated sacred bonding traditions, but they've actually..." He seemed unable to finish the sentence. "Engaged in physical relations," Elder Voss finished dryly. "Which, I should remind you, is the entire purpose of this arranged union." Zena stood tall despite the accusations. "Our private actions are not up for public debate. Everything about this union concerns us," Kay shouted. "You were supposed to tolerate the human for diplomatic reasons, not welcome him into your bed." Eric's voice cut through the chamber. "Choose your next words carefully, counselor." The room fell silent. "That's my future bondmate you're insulting." "There will be no bonding ceremony," Kay snapped bitterly. "The council cannot approve this aberration. The council does not have the authority to break a diplomatic agreement already ratified by both governments," Elder Voss replied firmly. "Then perhaps it's time for new leadership," Kay said coldly. The threat hung in the air. Zena's eyes narrowed. "Is that treason I hear, counselor?" "It's not treason to protect our people from corruption," he replied. "These humans tower over us like giants, and now they seek to tower over our bloodlines as well." "That's enough." Elder Voss struck the floor with his staff. But an explosion suddenly shook the entire chamber. Warning alarms began screaming throughout the complex. "We're under attack!" A guard burst into the room. "Rebel forces have breached the outer defenses." Zena instantly switched into combat mode. "How many?" 3 assault ships. At least 60 warriors. They've disabled the main defense grid. "The crystals," Eric realized. "The ones from the sacred caves. They power the shield generators." Outside the crystal windows, combat shuttles descended through Octanos's purple sky. "We need to reach the ceremonial chamber," Elder Voss said urgently. "It's the most defensible position and contains the backup communication array." "That system was designed for our size," Counselor K sneered. "The human will only slow us down." Eric ignored him and studied the building map on his datapad. "The maintenance tunnels," he said. Zena's eyes lit up with understanding. "The ones you can barely fit through. You run ahead and scout," Eric replied. "I'll crawl through the tunnels and follow behind, drawing attention if they breach." She considered the plan for a moment. "It's actually not a terrible idea." "Your confidence is overwhelming as always," Zena said. They exchanged a quick glance that said more than words ever could before she turned back to the council. We need to move. Now. The next 20 minutes were complete chaos. Zena led the council members through the narrow maintenance tunnels while Eric brought up the rear. His larger size made him an obvious target, but also a perfect barrier against anyone trying to chase them. When they reached a junction, Zena suddenly raised her hand for silence. 3 hostiles ahead, she whispered, armed with plasma rifles. We're trapped, Counselor K hissed nervously. Our warriors can't reach us in time, and we have no weapons. Eric caught Zena's eye and slowly raised an eyebrow. She understood immediately. Actually, Zena said with a sharp, predatory smile, we have exactly what we need. What happened next later became legend in the halls of Octanos. Using their size difference to perfect advantage, Zena jumped onto Eric's cupped hands. He launched her upward like a living catapult, sending her soaring over the rebels while he burst through the tunnel entrance below. Caught between a lightning-fast warrior from above and a human battering ram from below, the rebels didn't stand a chance. That, Zena said while catching her breath after they subdued the attackers, was almost as fun as our night together. Eric grinned. Now who's being improper? He tossed her one of the captured weapons. If you two are quite finished, Counselor K said while emerging from the tunnel, we still need to reach the ceremonial chamber. They continued fighting through the complex. Their completely different fighting styles turned into an unexpectedly powerful strategy. Eric's strength cleared paths and shielded the group, while Zena's agility allowed her to strike enemies from unexpected angles. Even the council members, led by Elder Voss, couldn't ignore how perfectly they worked together. When they finally reached the ceremonial chamber, they found it already under attack. A dozen rebels were attempting to break through the reinforced doors where the remaining loyal guards had barricaded themselves. We need a distraction, Zena said while studying the situation. Something that draws their fire while I move around their flank. Eric looked toward the decorative pillars lining the corridor. How attached are you to those columns? They are sacred artifacts dating back. Zena stopped mid-sentence when she realized what he meant. You know, they were getting a bit outdated anyway. That's my girl. Eric stepped toward the nearest pillar. Ready for you, mountain man, she said. With a powerful grunt, Eric shoved the massive column. The towering structure crashed down, sending tons of crystalline stone crashing toward the rebels. They scattered in panic. That was the opening Zena needed. With her precise strikes and Eric's overwhelming strength, they quickly cleared the corridor and reached the chamber doors. Inside, the communications array was still intact. Within minutes, Zena contacted their orbital defense fleet while Eric coordinated with nearby Earth forces. The rebels are retreating, a guard reported. Their ships are jumping to hyperspace. Cowards, Counselor K muttered. But this changes nothing about. Actually, Elder Voss interrupted calmly. I believe it changes everything. The room fell silent. The elder stepped forward slowly, his ancient eyes moving between Eric and Zena. Today we witnessed something remarkable, he said. Not just victory in battle, but the true meaning of unity. Their differences, which some called unnatural, proved to be their greatest strength. But our traditions, Kay began. Our traditions, Voss interrupted firmly, speak of harmony between opposing forces, balance between different strengths. What better example than these two? Zena stepped forward and placed her hand in Eric's. Our peoples are different, she said. But maybe that's exactly what both sides need. Besides, Eric added with a small smirk, someone needs to reach the top shelves in your archives. Laughter rippled across the chamber. Even Counselor K's tense shoulders relaxed slightly. The bonding ceremony 1 week later broke tradition in the best possible way. Earth vows were combined with Octanian rituals, creating something entirely new and somehow timeless. When Eric had to kneel so Zena could place the ceremonial crown on his head, her eyes sparkled with that familiar mischief. Still think size matters? He whispered quietly. Oh, it matters, she whispered back. Just not the way I thought. Then she spoke louder for the gathered guests. Though I still maintain you are ridiculously oversized. Later during the celebration, they danced. Eric lifted her effortlessly while she moved with graceful precision. Their differences created a harmony that drew admiration from everyone watching. That night, in their private quarters, Zena traced the new ceremonial markings on Eric's chest. You know, she said softly, when they first told me I had to marry a human giant, I thought it was the worst punishment imaginable. And now? Eric asked. She smiled, her real smile, the one that always made his heart skip. Now I think the universe has a better sense of humor than we give it credit for. She leaned up to kiss him. But if you tell anyone I said that, I'll deny everything. Your secret is safe with me, Captain, Eric replied while pulling her close. Though I might need some convincing to stay quiet. Is that so, Mountain Man? Her violet eyes sparkled. Well, I suppose size does have its advantages after all. As Octanos' twin suns set, filling their room with soft purple twilight, two very different beings proved once again that love does not care about measurements, traditions, or even species. Sometimes the greatest adventures begin when we stop seeing differences as obstacles and start seeing them as gifts. And if anyone in the palace happened to hear their laughter that night, well, some traditions were simply meant to be broken. Please follow my channel for more videos. One click from you can change my life.